Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something wild. How a change in safety rules for one single airline led to a crisis that brought an entire nation's travel to a grinding halt. It's a story that starts with chaos on the airport floor, but it reveals something much, much bigger about India's economy. So let's start with the people who were caught right in the middle of it all. I mean, just listen to that. A desperate plea from a father. It just perfectly captures the raw frustration and helplessness felt by hundreds of thousands of people. Men, women, children, all just left stranded, turning airports across the country into scenes of total chaos. And we're not talking about a small disruption here. In just the first few days of December 2025, over 600,000 passengers had their flights canceled, just like that. The sheer scale of this was, well, it's hard to even wrap your head around. Okay, so to really get what happened, let's start right there, inside the airports, and look at the direct and honestly painful impact this crisis had on everyday people. Anarchy is a strong word, but really, it fits. You had people sleeping on cold airport floors for days. We heard these unbelievable stories of families having to attend their own wedding receptions over a video call. Students were missing exams that could decide their entire future. And all the while, the price gouging was just off the charts. A short 1-hour flight from Delhi to Ranchi was suddenly costing more than a flight all the way to London. It was absolute madness. Now, here's the crazy part. You'd think this was caused by some epic blizzard or a massive technical failure across the fleet, right? Nope. The spark that lit this entire fire was actually a new set of safety regulations, rules that were designed to protect pilots and passengers. At the very heart of this is a bit of an acronym. FDTL. It stands for Flight Duty Time Limitations. But all you really need to know is that these are the super important rules that stop pilots from getting exhausted. They dictate how long a pilot can work and, crucially, how much rest they absolutely have to get. It's all about preventing fatigue-related accidents. And this table just lays it out perfectly. The new rules were a big deal. The minimum weekly rest for a pilot jumped from 36 hours to 48 hours. And look at this. The number of night landings, which are incredibly stressful, got slashed from 6 per week all the way down to just 2. Now, these changes make flying a lot safer, for sure, but for an airline, it also means you're going to need a lot more pilots, and your scheduling just got way more complex and more expensive. So how in the world did a safety upgrade lead to a national breakdown? Well, depends on who you ask. You've got two completely different stories. The official story from the airline was that it was a perfect storm. Some fog, a few tech issues, the holiday rush, and these new rules all just happened to hit at the exact same time. But the pilots' unions, they're alleging something way more calculated. They claim Indigo knew about these rules for nearly 2 years, chose not to hire more pilots, and basically manufactured a crisis to use public anger as a weapon to force the government to roll back these costly safety rules. Now, for that second story to even be possible, one airline would need to have an insane amount of power over the system. So we need to zoom out and look at just how staggering its market power really is. I mean, look at this chart. This tells you everything you need to know. Indigo doesn't just have a piece of the pie, it practically is the pie. With a colossal 65% of the domestic market, it's not just another airline. For the vast majority of people flying in India, Indigo is the only real choice. And this dominance didn't just happen overnight. They built it with a really disciplined, low-cost strategy. And while its major competitors like Kingfisher and Jet Airways were collapsing one by one, Indigo just kept expanding, connecting smaller towns and cementing its control over the skies. Okay, so here's where the story gets much bigger than just one airline. Because what happened with Indigo isn't some isolated incident. It's actually part of a much larger and, frankly, pretty worrying pattern that's playing out across India's most essential industries. First, you've got the aviation market. Like we just saw with Indigo controlling almost 2/3 of it, one company's problem immediately becomes a national crisis. Check. Okay, now think about your phone plan. It wasn't that long ago that you had a ton of choices. Then a brutal price war, led by Jio, pretty much wiped everyone else out. So what are we left with today? A duopoly. So now, when one of them decides to raise prices, the other can just follow right along because really, where else are you going to go? And we're seeing this exact same trend in an industry as basic as cement. A few giants are just buying up the smaller players, concentrating all that market power. And that reduces choices for a product you need to build basically everything from a home to a highway.
So this is the bottom line, right? What happens when this pattern of shrinking competition actually plays out in the real world? What's the actual cost to you? Well, the most immediate and frankly alarming consequence was a direct hit on safety. The country was so paralyzed that the government was pressured into granting a one-time exception, temporarily rolling back the very pilot safety rules that were designed to prevent accidents. Let that sink in. A single company's market power was so immense that it forced the nation's safety regulator to bend.
And next, it hits your wallet. It's the oldest story in the book. When competition dies, prices go up. That crazy surge in flight ticket prices during the crisis, that's not a bug, it's a feature. It's a preview of exactly what happens when consumers are left with no other choice. So in the end, the Indigo crisis is so much more than a story about canceled flights. It started with stranded passengers, it ended with a retreat on safety, and it shined a massive spotlight on this huge economic trend. It leaves all of us with a really critical question. When our choices disappear, one by one, what is the true cost we all end up paying?